Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you might be. My name is Shauna, and I'm delighted you're joining us today's ESPC community webinar. This webinar is part of Microsoft Fabric Week, proudly sponsored by Actuaries. Today I'm joined by Stephanie Bruno, MVP, who will present Semantic Link, a magic cauldron to unlock Power BI with Python. We love hearing what you guys have to say, so remember to join in the conversation about today's webinar. Our handle is at ESPC_community and our hashtag is hashtag ESPC25. Tweet us and tag us and tell us what you learned. Don't forget to check out our Learning Hub, which updates the latest blogs, ebooks, webinars, and how-to videos. You can access and view the Learning Hub by visiting our website, sharepointeurope.com, and clicking Content tab at the top. Don't let the learning stop here. Continue to keep up and stay ahead by joining us for our next webinar. Let your fabric work, load testing large amounts of data, with Wrightsar Eskins, MVP. This webinar will take place Tuesday, May 27th, 11 a.m. CEST. For more information on this webinar, please check out www.sharepointeurope.com, register for webinars. Falcon Europe tutorials are here. We're excited to launch a series of hands-on tutorials focused on the latest innovations and practical applications of Microsoft Fabric. Topics include Git integration, CI/CD pipelines, Microsoft Purview, Power BI, data warehousing, Microsoft Fabric, data agents, SQL databases, and more. Learn directly from experts and gain real-world skills that you can apply immediately. Use code FABRICWEEK150 to get €150 off the current deal. Limited time offer. Looking to expand your Microsoft Fabric skills? Join us in Vienna 15th to 18th of September for European Microsoft Fabric Community Conference. Experience 3 keynotes, 10 full-day tutorials, and over 130 plus expert-led sessions covering data engineering, integration, real-time analytics, business intelligence, and data governance. Sessions are delivered by Microsoft experts, community leaders, and Microsoft corporate speakers. Enjoy hands-on workshops, valuable networking, and memorable social events in a stunning setting. Scan the QR code to get your ticket and use code FABRICWEEK150 for €150 off your current deal. After the webinar, we'll have a questions and answers session. Type any questions you might have in the questions box. Questions will be selected and answered at the end of the presentation. This webinar will be recorded and added to the Resource Center, where you'll be notified by email when it's available. And now I'm going to pass you over to today's webinar presenter, Stephanie. Hello, Stephanie. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi, Tom. Thank you very much. I'm so happy to be here. Let's see. Am I sharing my screen yet?
Not yet.
Okay, let me just make sure that I've got that up here. All right, super. Okay, thank you. Okay, wonderful. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you all are. I am Stephanie Bruno. I am joining you today from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It is still very early here, but I'm very excited to talk about this. Semantic Link is one of my favorite topics in Fabric. So thank you for joining, and we will just jump right in. First, let me tell you a little bit about myself. Again, I am Stephanie Bruno. Can't decide if I'm the principal data witch or the grand high witch yet of data witches. We are a small consultancy focusing on training and consulting for Power BI and Fabric. I am a data platform MVP, also a Microsoft certified trainer. Feel free to reach out. I have my little QR code there if you would like to check out our website and get in touch. And with that, let's talk about what we're going to be discussing today. So what have we cooked up for you? I will share what Semantic Link is and some relevant terminology. I'll cover general features of Semantic Link and how to use it. And I will also show you an amazing extension of Semantic Link called Semantic Link Labs, and then some common use cases. There is so much you can do with Semantic Link and Semantic Link Labs, so it will not be exhaustive, but it will hopefully just give you some ideas, just give you a taste of what Semantic Link can do. It will also not be it's not meant to be a session on how to write Python. I am certainly not a Python expert, but I'm very excited about the potential of Semantic Link, and I hope that by the end of the session you will be too. A couple things, a fantastic site for you to bookmark and go back to is Sandeep Power's fabric.guru. He has numerous posts on Semantic Link there, including some great code snippets to get you started right away. He's just kind of to me, he's the uh, godfather of Semantic Link from the community. So everything I've pretty much learned has been from the community, particularly Sandeep and Fabric.guru. All right, so with that, let's just start with what is Semantic Link. If you're like me and you come from a background of Power BI, that's kind of what I'm envisioning here for today's session. If you are already a Python expert, this is more beginner. This is for people who maybe have done a lot of work with Power BI and they've heard about Semantic Link, but I'm not really sure what I can do with it. So what is it? It is a Python library for Fabric notebooks. It's intended for data scientists, but really it's useful for so many other people as well, like Power BI admins and devs. It's really great for automation scenarios, for example. So it is a feature of Fabric that allows you to establish a connection between semantic models and then data science or just notebooks in Microsoft Fabric. So again, I'm making an assumption here that you have seen Fabric by this point. It is an all-in-one analytics platform that includes 6 main workloads, including data engineering and warehousing, data factory, data science, real-time analytics, and of course the best one, Power BI. This is important because Semantic Link is available in Fabric, and because data science and Power BI are 2 of the workloads, both in Fabric, they're not disconnected, so it makes it really easy to link them up. We don't have to wire up all kinds of complex connections. It's all built in for us. So primary goals of Semantic Link are to facilitate some data connectivity and enable the propagation of semantic information and seamlessly integrate with established tools used by data scientists like the notebooks. So that's the official definition. But what does it really mean? Think about how historically we've used data from semantic models, or formerly known as data sets. If you wanted to get some, well, most often what we would do is we would build semantic models and then we would create reports using the models. But if you wanted to do some general data exploration of your model, you might then hook up a new blank report to it and start dropping things onto a table. Or you would connect with Excel, or if you were lucky enough to be the model creator, you could go into the data view and get a rough idea of what's in each table. But we didn't really have a lot of access into the data in the semantic model before without using one of these tools. So with Semantic Link, the semantic model is now unlocked for use within notebooks. So what that means is we can query the model with more tools than we had before, even including the measures. So not just what's in the tables. So not only can we query the model though, and the data in it, we can also get access to metadata. And this is just with Power BI, but there's even more we can do with Semantic Link throughout the whole tenant, for example. So we'll talk more about this when we go over some of the use cases and the demo. Okay, so how about a little bit of terminology? Again, if you're coming from a Power BI background, maybe you don't have a lot of experience with notebooks and Python. So this section is just going to be fairly short, just kind of going over what some of these terms are. So first of all, the semantic model, which used to be called the data set. This is our engine, this is our data for all of these reports that we build in Power BI. And then we've got Fabric notebooks. So they are a primary code item for developing Apache Spark jobs and machine learning experiments. Who might use notebooks? Usually it would be data engineers to write code for data ingestion, preparation, and transformation. And data scientists would use them to build machine learning solutions, create experiments and models, do model tracking and deployment. And with notebooks and Fabric, you can get started with very, very minimal setup effort, and we can analyze data across raw or processed formats using Spark capabilities. And Python. So Python is a programming language, interpreted, interactive, object-oriented. It supports multiple programming paradigms like procedural and functional programming. It's got huge power and very clear syntax. And you don't need to be an expert in it to be able to start using what I'm going to show you today. There are so many helpful notebooks already available that we can use and code snippets so we can easily get up and running. Now, Spark, what is that? It is a multi-language engine for executing data engineering, data science, and machine learning on single node machines or clusters. So it's very, very powerful. We can do batch and streaming data using Python, SQL, Scala, Java, and R. We can do SQL analytics. It's very, very powerful, so we can do data science at scale and machine learning. Now, PySpark is the Python API for Apache Spark. This enables us to perform real-time large-scale data processing in a distributed environment using Python. It combines Python's learnability and ease of use with the power of Apache Spark. Very, very powerful. Supports all of Spark's features like Spark SQL, data frame, structured streaming, machine learning, and Spark Core. Then we have libraries. So a library is a collection of pre-written code that can be imported to provide extra functionality, and that's what we've got with Semantic Link. Using libraries allows developers to save time and effort by not having to write code from scratch to perform a lot of common tasks. Fabric provides multiple ways to help us manage and use our libraries. There are built-in libraries, there are public libraries, and there are custom libraries that we can use within a Fabric notebook. And finally, APIs, which are a set of protocols that enable different software components to communicate and transfer data. So we'll be using all of these today in our demos. Right, so that's just some boring background. We're not really seeing too much of the magic quite yet, but we need to get that basis so that we can understand what we're going to be seeing and using and how to use it the best. So what are some general features of Semantic Link? There's great documentation on Microsoft Learn, so I highly recommend just looking it up. In Learn, there are some really good tutorials, and there's some just fantastic documentation to show us what we can do with Semantic Link. So what can we do? Well, we can get data, we can get metadata, and we can even perform actions. The data that we can get could be a whole table. It could be the result of a DAX query and including measures. Metadata we can get can be things like details on workspaces and data sets, refresh histories, relationships, measure definitions, and more. Finally, Semantic Link doesn't just provide a read-only experience on the data, we can even perform actions, like we can create lakehouses and notebooks and workspaces. We can execute XMLA commands and TMSL scripts, and we can kick off a data set refresh. So we can evaluate DAX queries. We could copy it from the DAX query view or DAX Studio, and we can run it in a notebook. We can evaluate a measure, including grouping by other columns and filtering. So this allows us to query the data, including the measures that we have built through a notebook, not just through a Power BI report or Excel. We can also get the metadata like workspaces and data sets, tables, measures, relationships, RLS definitions, partitions, and etc. So a great use case here could be just documenting your tenant. You can make a whole library of everything that's available in your tenant. You can get all this information through Semantic Link, and then you can save what you want into another lakehouse in Semantic Link to allow people to query it through the tools of their choice. And then the actions we can take, of course, we can refresh a data set, execute XMLA commands, create a lakehouse, etc. So it's really, it's almost unlimited what we can do when we combine the power of our semantic models with the notebooks and Fabric that we can use with Semantic Link. So if we needed to install it, well, we actually don't. For Spark 3.4 and above, Semantic Link is available in the default runtime. When we're using Fabric, we don't need to install it. If for some reason you have Spark 3.3 or below, then you would need to install it. by just using a command, this pip install. So yes, it is pre-installed in the default runtime. It remains at the version included in that runtime unless you upgrade. So you may still want to upgrade even though it is installed. So there are two ways to install Semantic Link or really any library that you want to use in a notebook. So the first method is within the notebook, the code cell like I just showed, the pip install. So this is great for cases where you might just manually run a notebook. And I'm showing you this because this isn't the only library we may need. There's also Semantic Link Labs. So you would just put this in the code cell at the top of your notebook and run it. And now you have access to Semantic Link or whatever library you install in the rest of your notebook. However, if you plan to schedule the notebook to run, it's better to use an environment where Semantic Link and any other libraries you need are already installed. Yeah, so the first time I used this Semantic Link before it was pre-installed, and I would have to use the pip install, my notebook would run in just a second if I scheduled it and nothing would happen. That's because I didn't realize it wasn't actually installing Semantic Link. If it runs into a code block with the pip directive, it will just stop. So if you plan to use these libraries in some kind of an automated process, it's better to create an environment. So now we can do that just by creating a new object in Fabric, a new item. We would create an environment, and then we could customize it with whatever libraries we would want to include. And then once you do that, then you can configure your notebook up at the top to use whatever environment you create. So if you're just using standard Semantic Link, you don't need to do all of this, but if you do want to use some other libraries in an automated fashion, then you'll want to create an environment like that. Okay, so finally now, Semantic Link Labs. This is some kind of next level awesomeness, which was developed by Michael Kowalski, who is one of the Fabric Cat members. It's a Python library designed for use in Fabric notebooks, which extends the capabilities of Semantic Link and offers additional functionalities. This one is not installed automatically, so you will need to install it. And it is open source with community contributions. It's just kind of mind-boggling how much work Michael has done building this. It's this just amazing, it's like it extends the capabilities. It's like a wrapper so that we can do even more without having to be Python experts. You can check it out. The link is here at the bottom, and he's also got some really helpful tutorials, just tons and tons of sample notebooks and code snippets that you can use for many, many tasks in Power BI and Fabric, which I will show you. Yes, so he's just made it much, much easier for us all. And it's interesting if you watch some of his videos, he says that by the time he built this, he had only been using Python for about a year. So this is just to inspire the rest of us to feel like we can also learn a lot in a short period of time, especially if we can just use some of the code that he's created for us. Then we can start to really learn what we can do with Semantic Link. So now let's talk about the why, right? I mean, we were all happy with Power BI and Fabric before, so exactly, why are we doing this? Why do I care? Well, some examples, some high-level examples of we can document our tenant. We can make a semantic model catalog, for example. We could save a snapshot of the data at a certain point in time. We can integrate our models with data science. We can come up with some data quality scenarios. We can use the APIs. We can do report analysis and so much more. So we will jump into a little bit more of the details of all of these now before we do the demo. So first of all, who doesn't love documentation? Who doesn't love creating documentation? I know, okay, so no, I don't actually love creating documentation for my semantic models. It's actually, kind of the least favorite and frequently ignored task for people. So we can use Semantic Link to help us actually document our tenant. We could create a dataset catalog, semantic model catalog, if we wanted to, of what tables are being used, the relationships, the measures that include the expressions, calculated columns, hierarchies, dynamic management views, and then we could execute DAX against our catalog, for example. So we can use this, the library to help us do this in just a couple of lines of code, which we will demo. I will demo. All right, another idea. Maybe you need to keep regular histories of what the data looked like at different points in time in your semantic model. If you were using a direct lake mode model, against a lake house, you could use the time travel feature of the delta tables. But what if the required business logic that you have developed is one step down the line in the semantic model? Then it's going to be a lot harder to keep, for example, a snapshot of the output of a measure, some kind of aggregation from your model. But with semantic link, it's easy to get a table into a Fabric data frame and then save that into another lakehouse. So you can get very meta on this, where you can be querying your model and then saving the output of some query back to the same lakehouse for inclusion in your model. So very next level roundabout. I really like this idea. I've had this use case a lot where customers will ask me, how do I just get a quick snapshot of my semantic model? Maybe I need to keep it, for every month. This is one way that you could do that very easily. All right, and how about some data science? Here I have Sandeep's picture on here. I'm sure he'd be thrilled, again, with his website, because this is a little image from his website where he's kind of showing us how Semantic Link really bridges the gap here between our Power BI semantic models and data science and machine learning. So we could use our silver layer data, for example, and we could write some Python against the data directly, but we could also have our semantic model be connecting to our gold layer, and we can connect directly with the logic in our semantic model as well. So this allows multiple teams working, from the gold layer to stay in sync, like a data scientist and a Power BI developer. So, for example, the data scientist could ensure that they're working with the most updated definition with some business logic. They don't have to recreate it in their own notebooks. They could actually use what the Power BI developer has created in the measures. So for example, the data scientist creates a forecasting model with time-related lags, what we in BI might refer to as time intelligence calculations. So why not use the same measures for guaranteed consistency? You could build an alert. So if maybe some DAX measures change, but if you save a snapshot of your data, you could compare that and then use a Fabric data pipeline to alert if the measure definition changes, for example. And then data scientists could also trigger retraining a pipeline if any changes are detected, or to evaluate if retraining is required. Another scenario would be data quality. So there are lots of options here, because we could use some built-in semantic link methods that are just right out of the box to help us with this. So we can use these functions to automate the evaluation of hypotheses about functional dependencies. We could find those identity violations of relationships in the semantic models. So for example, there's a find dependencies method to find dependencies between columns of a Fabric data frame. So to take it one step further, we can use list dependency violations. So just one little call there to show values within the data set that violate the dependencies. So for example, if we have a table with zip codes and cities, but the same zip code is attached to multiple cities, it could be flagged as a potential data quality issue. Having the ability to query a semantic model in a notebook opens up all of these possibilities. Maybe you would want to, for example, you could compare the output of a SQL query against your lakehouse with the output of a DAX query that's using a measure to ensure that what you're expecting in the measure is the same as what you would be able to write in a SQL query. This could be set up in a notebook to be automated and then output the results into another table in a lakehouse, for example. You could take it a step further with Data Activator to alert you if there are any discrepancies. And then finally, there's another really great example of how to use it for data quality. It's documented in a blog post that you can easily look up, just Great Expectations with Semantic Link in Fabric. And this is an extra tool that you can use to validate some kind of expected values in your data. So it has classes to implement specific validations that can be used to ensure that your data meets your required quality standards. So yeah, again, there's a really great tutorial that can walk you through exactly how to use this Great Expectations library with Semantic Link. Okay, and then there are the APIs. So there are Fabric and Power BI APIs, and this is really one area where Semantic Link Labs shines, is it makes it a lot easier for us to be able to use some of these APIs. Um, you know, we used to need to use PowerShell or something like that if we wanted to use the APIs. That was just an extra barrier to making it available, to making it useful and easy for people. But now with Semantic Link Labs, we've got some really nice wrappers to make that easy for us. And I think that that is probably enough talking. And now we should do a little demoing. So I will first just jump over to my browser. Okay, so the first thing, I just wanted to go through a couple of posts, actually. So one thing to note is that within a Fabric notebook, you can actually choose PySpark or Python. I'm not going to get into the differences here, but you can easily look up, just some helpful resources on should I just use Python or should I use PySpark for what I'm going to be doing here? You can use Semantic Link with either. So that's just one little call out I wanted to make mention of here. Now another one is you can get all of the technical details here with the SemPy library, the details here, so you can see all of the things that are available. You can go through. This just doesn't have, the helpful tutorials and the how-to to show you. This is just really the official documentation to see all of these functions that we can do. So you can see over here on the right, for example, you can get an idea of these functions that we have in Semantic Link, like create a lake house. So this is some things we can take some action. We could create a notebook. We could create a workspace. We can delete items. And here's where we can just evaluate a DAX query or a measure. Lots and lots of details in here. And then I know I've mentioned a couple times about fabric.guru. So again, I definitely recommend going here because Sandeep has many, many articles specifically about Semantic Link. So this is a great place to learn what you can do with Semantic Link and Semantic Link Labs as well. Another important place to go is Semantic Link Labs, which is on GitHub. This is where you're going to find a lot of really amazing documentation. If you go through, there's a wiki, there's documentation, there are many, many code examples. There's also a few videos. It's where Michael walks you through some things that he's done with Semantic Link Labs. He's constantly updating it. I don't think he ever sleeps. And I love this section here a lot with these featured scenarios of what you might want to do with Semantic Link Labs. You can see how you could migrate an import model to Direct Lake, for example. You can translate a semantic model's metadata. You can check your Direct Lake guardrails. So this is all semantic model kind of scenarios here. He's also got report ones. I like these a lot. A big request people have is they want to know, if I make a change in a semantic model, which reports might I break if I delete a measure or I change the name of a measure? Well, he's got this view broken reports here. So if you were to do that, if you were to make a change, you could actually see which reports might break. You can rebind reports to a different model, all kinds of things in here. You can actually do things not even related to the semantic model. You can be looking at what you might do with your Fabric capacities, your lake houses, notebooks, and again, here are those API, the wrapper functions for Power BI APIs, Fabric, and then there's also service principal authentication. Not only does he have these helpful scenarios, but there are even helper notebooks to get us started right away. So like I mentioned before, we don't really have to be Python experts to really get started and be able to use this because a lot of people in the community have done a lot of the work for us already. So again, here's how you would install Semantic Link Labs. This does not come installed automatically in Fabric like Semantic Link. So when you want to use Semantic Link Labs, you will need to install it. And he's also got the instructions here for either doing it within the notebook or again in that Fabric environment that we talked about earlier. This allows you to not have to do that pip install every single time. So you can create that custom environment. So I think if I can just share a couple important things today, it's really, these are the resources you want to be looking at. Semantic Link Labs on GitHub and Semantic Link on fabric.guru. These are just the two best resources that I can think of to learn, to take what you're going to see today and actually put it into practice and really get comfortable with it. Finally, I mentioned that Great Expectations tutorial right here. So if you want, you can just search, Semantic Link, Great Expectations. You'll get to this tutorial here, and it will walk you through a sample of how you can go through and you can validate some data with Great Expectations. Not only that, there are a number of other tutorials in here that will also walk you through step by step how you can do things. So you can extract and calculate measures from a notebook. You can discover your relationships. And here's that analyzing functional dependencies as well. So we have lots and lots of resources for how we can get started. And now with that, let me just walk you through some samples. So I will tempt fate here today by doing some live demo. Okay, so first of all, I would like to just make sure that I upgrade my semantic link. So I'm going to run this. And here we go. I hope you can see my screen. So we're starting our Spark session here. And again, I don't have to use PySpark. I could use Python here. So that's up to you to decide for your scenario, which one makes the most sense for you. When you use PySpark, you're using the Spark engine. It's very, very powerful, but it does consume more CUs in your capacity than just Python. But in some cases, you might really need that extra boost. So you might want to make sure that you're using PySpark. And because I'm tempting fate, starting the session usually only takes a couple seconds, but this morning, maybe it hasn't had its coffee yet, like me, so it's taking a little bit longer. But you know what? It's okay. We can actually go through because I think I have a little bit of this output already saved. All right, so we'll go through while this is thinking. So this is just that install. If it's already installed, then you can do this upgrade just to make sure that you have the latest version of it. And once we install it, then when we want to use it, we actually still have to do this import. We have to do this whether or not it's pre-installed. So we would do this import so that we can use our Fabric Senpai here. So the first thing, one thing that you can do in one line of code here, which I actually have commented out because I've added a little bit extra as a query, but we can just list our workspaces so we can see what workspaces we have available here. If I run this one, I'm querying where this is on dedicated capacity field is true. So now I can see here, these are all of my workspaces in this tenant that are on a dedicated capacity. So it's not including those that are just on a pro capacity, for example. And this is still running, so it's going very slow. Okay, so we can check out what workspaces we have, and I think it finally ran. Okay, so we can just run this, and we can quickly get these imported so that we can use them throughout the rest of our notebook. So now that they're there and this has run, we can see our output already. This is just from a previous run, but I can run this cell, and very quickly I can get this list of my workspaces. Now, what if I want to see more? I'd like to see what is in my workspaces. So I could see this would be getting all of the items in all of the workspaces for all of those that are in that data frame up above. So when you run these lines here, all I'm doing is assigning the output of this list workspaces function to a Fabric data frame called DF workspaces. So this is a pandas data frame, but it's a Fabric data frame. All right, so we can see now what are these items that I have in here. So this is where I'm starting to get that idea of how I might be able to make some kind of a library in my tenant. So I can see I've got a dashboard, I've got a number of reports, I've got a user data function, notebooks, etc. So there are 239 rows in here. We can also see all of the semantic models in our workspaces. So this would be for all of my workspaces. It's going to put together a table for me that has the workspace ID, and each of the semantic models. And here we go. So here are all of my semantic model names. I've got 68 semantic models in this tenant. So this would be a lot slower if I had a really, really big tenant. But here for my small tenant, it's not too bad. Now, if I wanted to I could get all the tables, for example. So just through this list tables. So I can just I can tell it which semantic model I want to look at, and it will tell me all of the tables in that semantic model. And I can see whether they're hidden, etc. So I could do the same thing with all of the tables in all of my whole tenant. I can also do that for measures, for example. We're not going to do all this because it might just be a little bit too slow. But I have a couple other notebooks that I'd like to share with you. Okay, so now I have this other one. This is a little bit more robust. I've got a little bit more going on here. Now this one, and I better probably get this started, right? Since it took a while before. So now this one I have attached to a lake house. So this is another thing we can do is we can attach a notebook to a lake house. That's a pretty common thing to do so that we can, work with the data that's in that lake house. We can either query it or we can save to it. So that's what we'll be doing in a little bit. And again, if you are new to notebooks like I was, they're really, really cool because we can not only write these code blocks, but we can also document our notebook. So here I've got, some descriptions here. I've got an image that I can include. So this can make it really helpful for people to pick up your notebook and start working with it because you can put a lot of documentation in here. So I just have some information about, semantic link and who might use it. Actually, for now, I'm going to put our Explorer away just so you can see this a little bit better. So this time our session ran a lot faster. Thank you, Fabric. Okay, so we've run the first cell here. And now the next cell, what I want to do is just assign a few variables. I'm going to use this workspace and this report and this semantic model specifically for some analysis and some work I want to do in this notebook here. I'm going to get a list of the reports in this workspace. I'll assign that to a data frame. And then I'm going to get the report ID of a specific report, Fabricam sales, that I want to look at. So here we're just going to assign a couple of these variables here. And once this one is done, we can actually view the report in the notebook. I think this is pretty cool. So this is actually not a semantic link feature. This is just another Fabric feature. So we would be using this Power BI client, and we can view a report in a Fabric notebook. So this is just going to pop up here, and you'll see it's the fully interactive report, and we can click around. So, maybe I'm a data scientist here, and I just want to get some information on this report, and I can see that, okay, this is fully interactive. I can click in here. Again, this is not a semantic link feature. This is just a cool Fabric notebook feature here. Okay, so now let's say I want to learn a little bit more about the semantic model behind this report because I need to do some analysis. And I can see it's got the data that I need. I need to be looking at sales and units and all of these things. So I can see that there must be some business logic already built in here that maybe I can take advantage of. So let me learn a little bit about what's in this semantic model. I didn't develop it, I'm just somebody who's going to be using it. So the first thing I want to know is, what are the tables in the semantic model? I can do this just with fabric.list tables, and I can just pass it my semantic model name. If I don't pass it a workspace name, it will use the workspace that I'm currently in. All right, and I can see, I've got these 11 tables here. None of them are hidden. We can see if they're a data category and what type they are. Okay, so this is helpful. I don't know how to use it yet because I need to know more about what are the columns in here, right? So I can now just use fabric.list columns, pass it that same semantic model name, and I can display this table, and I can see just how many columns there are, the columns in every single one of my tables. I can see, if they have a format string, are they hidden? What is their type, the data type, if they're in a display folder. So there's lots and lots of information about the columns that are in my semantic model. But now that I know that, maybe I want to just inspect, I've got the columns here. Let me just see the ones for a specific table because I'm interested in the date table and what fields are in here. So I'm just going through, I'm just exploring. Before, if I wanted to do this, I would have needed access to the semantic model. And maybe I could have written some DAX to get it, but I didn't have it in this really, handy one-line feature that I could use. Next up, in order for me to know how to use this data, I do need to see the relationships. So we can use these other, we can use find relationships and list relationships to be able to see what are the relationships in our model. So again, I've got this nice output here that tells me, is it many to one? Is it one to one? The from table and column to the to table and column. I can see that most of these in here are single direction, not bidirectional, so I like that. But this is a tabular view, so it doesn't work necessarily as well for me. I might be a more visual person. I want to see what that looks like. But again, I am happy to see that I have so many one direction relationships here. Who doesn't like one direction, right? This is just our friendly reminder to try to keep our single direction relationships in our semantic models where we can. But again, okay, so I would rather see it though, right? Because it's hard to understand my relationships just from a tabular view for me. So again, here this is a semantic link function here, which is just plot relationship metadata, and then we get a nice view. So this really helps me now. I'm starting to get an understanding of the tables available here. I need to build out a model and get some kind of a prediction or something, but I need to understand the data first. So this is starting to really get in my mind now. Okay, I can see the sales table. I can see the dimensions here that I might need to use. So, okay, but now what are the measures in this table? So here we can just use fabric.list measures. So hopefully you're getting the idea here that there's a lot of power in very little code. So while I've got a few things wrapped around it, the base code is, it's just one line, fabric.list measures, pass it the semantic model name, and I get this really rich information here. So what I love about this is that I can see the DAX query for the whole measure. So this is again where maybe you might want to make a measure library and let people know what measures are in all of the semantic models. You don't want to be duplicating efforts. So, it's helpful to have this library of what measures you've got available and what their definitions are. We can see if I have descriptions. I don't in this case, but I know that I could use Semantic Link Labs to probably help me develop those automatically. I've got my format strings, etc. But what's really nice, what I like to see is this measure expression. So the one that we're going to kind of peek at a bit more today is this sales measure. So we can just see it's very simple. It's just sum of sales amount, but just we're going to pay attention to what that one is. Now, one thing we can do Now we want to start, using the data, right? We want to kind of we want to explore our data a little bit. So one thing we can do is we can just write a DAX query. So we've got this fabric.evaluate DAX, and we can summarize our product table and get the sales by product by just doing this evaluate DAX. So maybe you would get your DAX from DAX Query View or DAX Studio or something, but you can just paste it in, and wow, we get the output of a DAX query, including a measure, right? So, this data scientist here doesn't have to rebuild the logic for the total sales measure. It's just the sales measure. Now, let's just say though, the developer didn't know that, the data scientist didn't know that. So they needed to load some data from the lake house, and they're going to rebuild the sales logic by just summing up the sales amount value from the sales table. So this code block here is not using semantic link. This is just using Spark SQL to get the values from the sales table, and we're aggregating it by month and year from the invoice. We're doing a group by, and then here's that sum. So this is where we're doing the Python equivalent here of what we had in DAX to get our sales amount. So again, this cell block here, not semantic link. This is just simply doing an aggregation from a Spark SQL query. So we'll get the output of this in just a minute, and hopefully it will be friendly with us and we can see the output. Then what we'll do after this comes out, after we see the output here, is we'll actually load that same data, but this time from the semantic model using a measure. Okay, so we can see these values here. We got 2540736 for month 1 of 2020. Now, in this case, though, I actually want to use fabric.evaluate measure because I know I have the measure for sales already. So I'm just going to do the same thing, except now I just tell it what workspace and semantic model I want. I tell it the group by columns, which again are date, year, and month. And then I want this measure, sales. So when we run this one, we expect to get the same values, right? So 2020, 2540736.3, 2540736.3. That's great. One thing to note is the precision here. We've got a lot of decimal places for months 4 and 5. We don't have that in our evaluate measure version because we have specified already the precision in there. But other than that, they're the same. However, though, what if I, as the semantic model developer, I got an instruction that I need to go and I need to change the sales measure. Something has changed in the business logic, so I need to change that measure. So if I'm in the semantic model here and I go into editing mode and I know where that measure is, that sales measure here is down in the metrics table, I've been given a directive. I'm going to be unethical and we are going to inflate our company's sales by 10% from now on. Shh, okay, just kidding. But we're going to change the logic. So now we've got this times 1.1, but the data scientist doesn't know that, right? Because they're just doing their other analysis. So now that this measure has changed though in the official the official logic, if we go back to the notebook, we can see, if we go back up to our definition here of our measures, it was sum of sales amount. If I rerun this, now quick note, when I first did this, I didn't realize I had to refresh the Tom cache if I wanted to see the change. So that's why this line is up here. Otherwise it will be cached in memory a bit. But now we can see that the sales measure has changed. So now here it is with our change that we just made a minute ago. And we can see that update. But the data scientist didn't get the message. So if the data scientist is not using the measure and just summing sales, they're not going to get the same output as we got based on the measure change. So now when I rerun my block here, I up in the manual aggregation, I've still got 2540736, but now it's inflated. It's a much bigger number, using the measure. So this is really just to kind of illustrate for us how, um, having our business logic built in the semantic model, we don't want to rebuild that logic elsewhere. We would like to have our one place where that logic is developed, and then it can be used by not only report developers and analysts, but also other people that might need to do some analysis on the model. All right, so another next level kind of thing that we can do here is we can get a forecast. So we're going to just change this data frame a little bit to prepare for this profit model here. And then what we can do, and this is actually a code block from the Fabric Analyst in a Day training. So if you haven't taken that and you want to learn more about Fabric, I highly encourage you to sign up for one of those. But this is using this profit model. We're not going to go through the details because I want to have enough time for a couple questions. But we can prepare the data. This is not very many lines of code, but what it's going to give us is a prediction for our future sales. So if we just run this, we can install it, get our forecast. We can get a little view of it in a moment once it finishes running. And then what I'd like to share is how we can actually do that kind of very meta thing where we can use our semantic model to get a value, sales. We can run a prediction to get the future sales as a forecast. And then what we can even do is we can write that back. So let's just see what our visual of our forecast looks like. We've got a couple views of it in here. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but this is just going to show us the predictions. This is removing any seasonality. And then here it is just including the seasonality. So, okay, great. We love these predictions. We want to keep an eye on them. We want to see how we do compared to our predictions. So now we can see that same forecast instead of as a visual, but as a table. And then finally, what we could do is we can actually take that forecast and we can write it back to our same lakehouse as the table called sales forecast. We're going to overwrite it in this case, but maybe you would want to append it. And we can see if I expand our lakehouse again here, that we actually have that table in here. Here's our sales forecast table that we just overwrote with our latest prediction. So just moving down, you could include this prediction logic into an ETL process so that your predictions are added at the end. You can use semantic link then to refresh your model, and then the model will feed the prediction, which feeds the model. It's very, very Inception. Okay, so that's an example like using the model, right? And this is just semantic link. And then finally, what I wanted to show you, the last thing I wanted to share before we wrap up and have a couple questions is, here is a notebook. This is taken from the Semantic Link Labs GitHub here. We have these sample notebooks. If I click on this, and he's got a bunch of them here that you can just download, and then you can import them into your Fabric workspace. So the one that I'm just going to show you right here is this report analysis one, but notice he's got a whole bunch of other ones in here as well. So you can just grab these notebooks, you can import them into your workspace, and then you can start using them. So really quickly, I'll jump back here, and we've got this. This is exactly his same notebook. The only thing I've done is changed what report name that I would want to look at and what report workspace it's in. So one thing you can run is the report best practice analyzer. I thought I had my output saved here, but doesn't look like I do. But I'm not going to run it just because I don't think I can tempt fate 3 times with starting up my Spark session. But what you can do is you can run the report best practice analyzer on a report in your workspaces, and you can get the output that will tell you if you have broken any of these rules. So for example, he's got some custom rules added in this block. So this rule highlights visuals filters, etc., that might be broken because they reference an invalid semantic model object. So this is that great case where if somebody makes a change to a measure or renames a column, it may impact some reports down the line, and this is going to help you find where those problems are. You can also view all of the semantic model objects within a report. So this is great for you to get an idea of which ones maybe aren't needed and which ones are needed, so you can help clean up your models. You can see any reports that are broken because maybe they are referring to something else. And then there's all these other ones here. You can get a list of the pages in a report, a list of all the visuals in the report, a list of all the filters in the report. And then you can also perform some actions on a report. Maybe you would like to change the theme of the report. You can do that right here from Semantic Link Labs. You can set a report page visibility, tons and tons of features in here. Again, you can see this is all, like a line of code because all of these other wonderful people have made it easy for us to just use what they have developed. All right, so now with that, let me just jump back over to this. And there are just a few, I have some resources here. So hopefully I can find a way to share this PowerPoint with you so that you can see what
Yeah,
some of these resources are. But really the best thing I'm just going to reiterate is the Semantic Link Labs GitHub and the fabric.guru from Sandeep, and then the main documentation on Microsoft Learn is also really, really good and has all those great tutorials. So I think with that, are there
perfect.
any questions?
Yeah, Stephanie, yeah. You could share the presentation with me afterwards by email, as a lot of people are asking for it, and a lot
Okay.
of people are asking for the notebook links as well.
Okay. You know what? I actually do have one notebook link. So there are
Perfect.
the
You can
ones
share with
that,
me after, and then I can
okay,
put it on the recording. Yeah,
okay, sounds
perfect.
good.
Amazing. Yeah, so we'll just get into the questions if that's okay. So the first question there is there a limit with respect to the table size that you read via semantic link with respect to
Table size, like how much data that you can pull in?
yeah,
I'm sure there is an upper limit, and it may depend on your capacity, how much you can read in. Um, I don't have an answer, but I'm gonna guess that there's a limit. Um, but yeah, it might be based on your capacity size. So whether you have the F2, the F4, the F8, etc., or it may just be slower. I don't know. So that's going to be that you're going to have to make that decision between if you want to use PySpark, which is more powerful but uses more capacity units, or Python, and then yeah, it might just consume more capacity. But I don't have a hard and fast answer on that one.
perfect. So the next question is, can you use semantic link libraries in Azure Synapse notebooks, or is it obligatory to have a Fabric license?
That's a great question too. I've actually wondered that, and I don't have an answer for that one either. But maybe when I email you the PDF, I can include that answer.
Yeah, perfect.
I think I
Do
think
the
it's no.
oh,
I
sorry.
think it's Fabric notebooks, but I'm not positive.
Do the lib require a Fabric notebook, or can one example cook up a Docker container outside of Fabric and query the SM using a token for authentication?
I do not know the answer to that one either. I think that's similar to the last question, but I don't have an
Perfect.
answer.
Perfect. So the next question is, we're using Fabric and Power BI APIs to create a full inventory of our Fabric ecosystem. Why might we consider migrating SMP methods? It's is fine for small environments, but will it scale to enterprise size environments?
Yeah, again, I think that's probably similar to that first question, which I mean, not the same question, but the row limit, just like how big can it be and how much time might it take? Again, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I was showing examples with, not a ton of workspaces or semantic models. So I think that's going to be a scale issue with your capacity. And why might you consider? I mean, if you've already got something that works for you, that's fantastic. If that's working, why change something that's not broken? For a lot of other people, maybe this using semantic link is going to be the right solution. So, there's multiple ways to do things, pros and cons to all of them. So you would just have to compare. But I would suggest, always just try it out, see how it works, see how much capacity it takes, see if it's worth it for you to switch over.
Perfect. So the next question there is, can you also control row level security in this? So overall reports. So when you change something, you have to do once.
I think you can. I did see some examples in the Semantic Link labs of RLS, and I think also in Semantic Link. So I do think you have some control over RLS that you can update through either Semantic Link or Semantic Link labs.
Perfect. So the next question there is, how much Copilot is useful if we don't Python or PySpark? Is 20% of learning is enough and rest can Copilot do?
Copilot has helped me a lot with it because, as I said, I don't have a Python background. I'm really just learning from the documentation and from these resources, and Copilot has definitely helped me a lot. One thing that um, Michael Kowalski has on the very bottom of his GitHub page is how you can contribute. And I wanted to give myself a challenge of contributing. There was something I wanted to add, and I didn't know what I was doing, but I knew there was a feature I wanted to add. So I did manage to figure it out thanks to some help from Copilot. So I was able to, learn a bunch of Python through using Copilot. So I think, I wouldn't totally count on it. I would definitely trust but validate, make sure it's actually working, but it's a great way to help you learn. Absolutely. Copilot was fantastic for me for being able to contribute like that.
Perfect. So I think that's all the time we have for. There's a good few questions in. Would they be able to message you directly on LinkedIn, or is that okay, Stephanie?
Yeah.
Just
Yep,
if
that'd be
anyone
great.
has any questions. Yeah. So on behalf of the ESPC community, we'd like to extend a big thank you to you again, Stephanie, for taking time out to carry this webinar. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I was so happy to be here.
It was amazing. Thank you. So that's the end of today's webinar. You can find this webinar and more at sharepointeurope.com/resource center. Thanks again for all of you for joining us today. I hope you join us again soon. Take care.